My family exploited me for 24 years in their business without pay. While my lazy cousin was the heir, I saved them from bankruptcy. But when I discovered their secret plan for Derek, I sold my 40% and left them to collapse again. I'm 34 years old. I work in digital marketing for a tech company, and it's been about a year since I left the family business for good. And honestly, it's been the best decision of my life. But getting to that point took me literally decades of being basically an unpaid slave while my idiot cousin was treated like the crown prince. The thing is, my family has a barbecue restaurant chain that my grandfather started in the 60 seconds, and it grew pretty well, got to like 8 or 9 locations at its peak. And I guess my dad and my Uncle Charles always assumed their sons were going to continue the family legacy, but the way they treated me versus how they treated Derek, my cousin, was so ridiculously unfair that it still makes my blood boil when I think about it. It all started when I was like 10 years old, maybe 11. I don't remember exactly, but I know I was young. And my dad took me to the restaurant one Saturday and said, "Come on, I'm going to teach you the family business." And I thought it was going to be like an educational tour or whatever, but no, he basically put me to work cleaning tables and washing dishes. And look, I didn't mind helping. I was a kid and I thought it was cool to be at the restaurant with the adults. But what I didn't know at the time was that this was going to become my life for the next several years without receiving a single penny. Literally zero compensation. My dad would say things like, "It's your family responsibility. Your grandfather built this for all of us. Someday this will be yours." All those phrases that I now understand were pure emotional manipulation to get free labor. I spent my entire adolescence working at those restaurants. Weekends, summer vacations, holidays, didn't matter. I had to be there. I'd start in the kitchen at 6 in the morning on Saturdays and Sundays, prepping things, cleaning, basically doing all the heavy work that nobody else wanted to do. My friends were at home playing video games or going out to do whatever normal teenagers do, and I was there with burned hands pulling trays out of the oven or cutting pounds and pounds of onions until my eyes watered. And every time I tried to say something, every time I suggested that maybe I could have a weekend off or that maybe I deserved to be paid something, my dad would pull out the ace up his sleeve. "Don't you care about your grandfather's legacy? Don't you care about this family?" And my mom was worse. She used guilt like it was a weapon. "Oh, Joshua, I can't believe you're being so selfish. Your father works so hard, the least you can do is help." Meanwhile, Derek, who's 2 years older than me, basically did nothing. Nothing. The guy would show up at the restaurant maybe once a month, sit in the office with my Uncle Charles, play on his phone, and everyone acted like he was the future CEO of the company. My uncle treated him like he walked on water, and my dad never said anything about it because I guess he didn't want to create conflict with his brother. Derek didn't even know how to cook, didn't know anything about inventory management, nothing about customer service, literally nothing about how the business worked. But everyone talked about him like he was a business genius in waiting. Once, when I was like 16, I heard my uncle tell my dad, "Derek's going to take this business to the next level when it's his turn." And I was standing there in my uniform all stained with barbecue sauce after working 10 hours, and nobody mentioned my name even once. When I got to 17, I started thinking seriously about my future, and I realized that if I continued down this path, I was going to end up trapped in those restaurants forever, working for free or minimum wage while Derek got all the credit and eventually all the control. So I decided I was going to go to college, study marketing, and get out of that toxic dynamic. I told my parents when I was 18, right before graduating high school, and the reaction was worse than I expected. My dad got furious, told me I was being ungrateful, that I was wasting my life, that college was a waste of time when I already had a successful business waiting for me. My mom cried, literally cried, like I'd told her I was going to die or something. And when I asked them to help me pay for college, considering I had worked for free for them for almost 8 years, they told me no, that if I wanted to waste my life at college, I'd have to pay for it myself. So that's what I did. I moved out of the house, got a small apartment with 2 roommates, worked 3 different jobs while studying full-time, and basically didn't talk to my family for almost 5 years except at Christmas or birthdays. It was hard. I'm not going to lie. There were nights when I slept like 4 hours, because I had to work night shifts at a supermarket after classes, and then wake up early to go to campus. But honestly, I felt freer than I'd ever felt in my life. I didn't have to listen to my dad's sermons. I didn't have to deal with my mom's emotional manipulation. I didn't have to see Derek being treated like royalty while I was the workhorse. I graduated at 23 with a marketing degree and got a decent job at an advertising agency. I wasn't making a fortune, but it was my money, my career, my life. I started building my own professional connections, developing real digital marketing skills, and I was doing well, honestly. My family kept calling me from time to time, always with the same message. We need your help in the business. Your grandfather would be disappointed. The family is falling apart without you. All those things designed to make me feel guilty. And for a while I resisted. Told them I was busy with my career, that I was building something for myself. But the pressure was constant. When I was 26, I caved. It was a huge mistake. But at the time I thought, okay, maybe I can make a difference. Maybe now that I'm an adult with professional education, they'll take me seriously. I quit my job at the agency and went back to the family business with the promise that I was going to have a real role, with real salary and real responsibilities. My dad told me, "You're going to be the marketing director. You're going to modernize our operations. I trust you." Sounded good in theory. The reality was completely different. From day one, I encountered resistance in every decision I tried to make. I wanted to implement a digital loyalty program. My dad said it was too complicated and too expensive. I wanted to improve our social media presence. My uncle said that was for young modern restaurants, not for an established family business. I suggested we start offering online ordering because it was 2019 and basically every restaurant was already doing it, and they told me our customers preferred to call on the phone. It was frustrating to the point of wanting to scream at them, but the worst part was that while I faced opposition in everything, Derek, who was now, like 28, and still doing absolutely nothing useful, was still treated like the prodigal son. The guy would arrive late, leave early, spend most of the day on his phone, and when my uncle asked him something about the business, he had to check with me because he had no idea about anything. But still everyone kept talking about him as the future of the company. I put up with a year of that crap before quitting again. I told them that if they weren't going to listen to my ideas or respect my professional experience, then there was no point in me being there. My dad got angry. My mom again with the emotional drama. But this time I didn't care. I left, got another marketing job, and went back to cutting off almost all contact with them. I thought I'd finally learned my lesson, that I was never going to fall into that trap again. And then 2020 came, and the pandemic basically destroyed the business. Restaurants were among the hardest hit businesses, and a barbecue chain that depended on family, dinners and large events was hit especially hard. By the end of 2020, they had closed 4 of the 8 locations, and the ones that remained were barely surviving. My dad called me in December of that year, and for the first time in my life, I heard him sound genuinely scared. He told me, "Joshua, we need your help. The business is dying. We don't know what to do. You understand digital marketing and online ordering and all that, please." This time, I negotiated before accepting. I told them, "Okay, I'll come back, but I want 40% of the company and complete operational control. No committees, no having to ask my uncle for permission for every decision, no Derek getting in my way. Either you accept those conditions, or I don't come back." They were so desperate. They agreed. We put everything in writing, made it legal, and in January 2021, I returned to the family business for the third and final time. Now, as a minority partner with real executive authority, the first 6 months were brutal. I had to fire Derek, which caused massive family drama, but the guy literally contributed nothing, and we needed to cut costs. My uncle didn't talk to me for 3 months after that, but honestly, I didn't care because I was too busy trying to save the business. I implemented online ordering at all the remaining locations, created a digital loyalty program, completely redesigned our social media strategy, started doing targeted marketing campaigns, optimized the menu to reduce waste, renegotiated contracts with suppliers, literally did everything I had wanted to do years before, but nobody had let me, and it worked. By the end of 2021, the 4 locations that remained were profitable again. By mid-2022, we had opened 2 new locations in strategic spots that I identified using actual market analysis. The business didn't just survive, it was thriving in a way I hadn't seen in years. I was working like crazy, basically 70 hours a week, but I was seeing real results, and that motivated me. I thought, okay, maybe this is going to work. Maybe I'll finally get the recognition I deserve. Sometime in 2022, my dad and uncle started having private meetings that I wasn't invited to. At first, I didn't think much of it. I assumed it was brother stuff or whatever, but then I noticed Derek started showing up more often at the restaurants again. He wasn't doing anything, just walking around and talking to people, but his presence seemed weird to me considering I had specifically fired him. I asked my dad what was up, and he said, "Oh, he's just visiting, he's still family." The truth came out in early 2023, and it was so ridiculous, I almost laughed when they told me. Turns out my dad and uncle had been secretly planning to make Derek the CEO of the company once the business was stable again. They wanted me to do all the hard work of recovery, modernization, and growth, and then basically hand over control to Derek so he could say he ran a successful company, without having done anything to build it. I found out because I overheard a phone conversation between my dad and uncle while I was in the office late one night. I literally heard my dad say, "Once Joshua has finished fixing everything, we can bring Derek back in a leadership role." And my uncle responded, "Yeah, I think by the end of the year Derek will be ready to take the reins." I sat there in shock for like 10 minutes after they hung up. All the rage I had felt in my adolescence, all the resentment I had accumulated over the years, it all came back at once. I had saved their business. I had invested 2 years of my life working to exhaustion. I had made difficult decisions they never would have had the courage to make, and their plan was to give everything to Derek. Again, like always. I didn't confront my dad that night. Instead, I went home, slept a couple hours, and the next morning, I called my lawyer. I told him, "I want to sell my 40% of the company. I need to get out of this as soon as possible." We spent the next 2 weeks reviewing the corporate documents, determining the fair market value of my stake, and preparing everything. The value of my 40% had gone up significantly thanks to my efforts, which was ironic but also satisfying. When I finally presented the papers to my dad and uncle, it was one of the most tense conversations of my life. My dad tried to convince me to stay, said I was misinterpreting things, that Derek was only going to have a symbolic role, all obvious lies that I wasn't buying anymore. My uncle was quiet, which confirmed to me that he knew exactly what they had been planning. I gave them 2 options. Either they bought my stake at the price my lawyer had determined, or I was going to sell my 40% to an outside investor who was probably going to have very different ideas about how to run the business. They didn't want a stranger as a majority partner with them, so they had to agree to buy my share, although they had to take out a considerable loan to do it, which honestly gave me a bit of satisfaction. The legal process took about 2 months, and during that time I kept going to the business because technically I was still a partner, but I basically didn't talk to anyone except the employees. My mom called me all the time, crying, telling me I was destroying the family, that I was being cruel to my dad. All the classic emotional manipulation. This time it didn't work. I had matured too much to fall for that trap again. Finally, in May 2023, the transaction was completed. I sold my 40%, received a considerably large check that was more money than I'd ever had in my bank account, and officially ended all association with the family business. It was liberating in a way I can't fully describe. I felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders, a weight I'd been carrying since I was 10 years old. My dad tried to reconcile with me a few months later. "Invited me to dinner," said he. "I wanted to fix things." But when I went, it turned out he basically wanted me to come back to work with them because, surprise, Derek was making a mess of the business. I told him no in the most polite way possible, finished my dinner, and left. I haven't talked to him since, and honestly, I don't miss it. About 2 months ago, I found out from a former employee who still follows me on social media that they had to close 2 of the 6 locations because Derek implemented a bunch of stupid changes that basically undid everything I had built, and now they're struggling financially again. Part of me wanted to laugh, but honestly, I just felt some sadness for the business my grandfather built. Not for my dad or my uncle, definitely not for Derek, but for the legacy they basically let go to waste because of nepotism and ego. Now I work in digital marketing for a tech company. I make good money. I have work-life balance for the first time in my life, and I don't have to deal with toxic family dynamics every day. I use the money I got from the business to buy an apartment, invest in my future, and basically live the life I always wanted to live, but never could, because I was trapped in that cycle of family exploitation. I don't talk to my dad, very little with my mom, and zero with my uncle or Derek. Some relatives think I'm the bad guy in the story, that I abandoned my family when they needed me most, but those people don't know even half of what I went through, so their opinions don't affect me. What I learned from all this is that family can be incredibly manipulative when it suits their interests, and that family legacy and all those nice phrases are often just tools to exploit the people who actually do the work. I also learned that it's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to walk away from toxic situations even when they involve your own family, and it's okay to prioritize your own mental health and happiness over the expectations others have of you. It took a long time to get to that point. Basically 24 years from when I started working at those restaurants until I finally freed myself completely, but it was worth every second of the struggle.